Why should we be working twice as hard for it than these guys? I'm thinking we need to make the guards earn their pay.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 science experiments gone horribly wrong.
I thought I was doing something good for science, but in the end, it was the worst thing I could ever have done.
For this list, we'll be looking at experiments that caused large amounts of harm, went too far, or are just plain bizarre. What's the craziest science experiment you've ever heard of? Be sure to share in the comments below. Number 10. Guatemala Syphilis Experiments. As you can probably guess from the title of this entry, these experiments went wrong from the very start. Between 1946 and 1948, the United States led an experiment where doctors infected 1,300 individuals with syphilis, chancroid, and gonorrhea without consent. The subjects were exposed to pathogens via intercourse with infected sex workers, forced perforations of their spines, and by having bacteria poured on their bodies. Of the infected individuals, only about 700 received medical treatment in the form of penicillin, leaving hundreds of people to experience the full force of these horrible diseases. At least 83 individuals died by 1953 as a result of this inhumane experiment. Number 9. The radiation poisoning of Clarence Daly. Today, X-rays are used to diagnose everything from tuberculosis to broken bones, therefore improving and saving lives. However, their powerful radiation can have devastating effects, as Thomas Edison's trusted assistant Clarence Daly learned the difficult way. Daly was a glassworks expert and helped Edison develop the X-ray focus tube and fluorescent lamp. Sadly, Daly's pioneering work is what ultimately ended his life. Due to the radioactive effects of Edison's experiments and Daly's work, Daly suffered from radiation poisoning, which caused him to lose his hair and develop ulcers on his hands. Despite extreme treatments, including the amputation of both his arms, Daly lost his life due to radiation poisoning in 1904. Number 8. MKUltra.
Pacing the hall this morning, saying, "I'm just a prisoner. I feel like Jesus on the cross. Can feel the nails in my hands."
As we've discussed before, government entities have no shortage of awful human experimentation in their histories. Between 1953 and 1973, the CIA carried out a series of mind control experiments on thousands of people to discover the effects of hypnosis, torture, abuse, and psychoactive drugs such as LSD. These experiments were intended to uncover which methods and drugs could weaken people and force them to confess or offer up information related to the CIA's investigations.
He also was put in an insulin coma for 36 days with a recording beside him saying that your mother hates you.
The experiments were illegally carried out on thousands of unwitting American and Canadian citizens, many of whom were veterans. While the exact number is unknown, there were at least a few deaths as a result of MKUltra. Number 7. Dorset Biological Warfare Experiments.
And all those children seem to have gone on to have these problems.
Between 1953 and 1975, the government of the United Kingdom conducted experiments on its own citizens to determine the potential impacts of biological warfare agents. Initially, the scientists of Porton Down used the simulated agent zinc cadmium sulfide over 10,000 square miles, which did not have a major impact on the citizens who were unwitting test subjects. However, in the 1960s, the scientists used live bacteria in their tests and targeted South Dorset with Bacillus subtilis as the test agent. While the exact results of these tests remain unknown, many people in the area believe the experiments caused birth defects.
There must be something, because every girl's been affected one way or the other. So, one girl suffered a tragedy.
Number 6. TGN 1412. Leukemia is a horrible disease that causes chaos throughout the victims' bodies. So, of course, medications that could potentially treat the condition are of high priority. However, because of the nature of cancer drugs, they need to go through several trials before they're used on humans.
TGN 1412 was intended to treat cancers by educating our own immune system into dealing with them.
Unfortunately, the experimental drug TGN 1412 was moved to human trials far too early, and 8 young men volunteered to be test subjects for the medication.
It was never really discussed in great detail. It was just one point in 10, 15 points that was set out.
Within an hour of receiving the drug, 6 of the volunteers' bodies fell into cytokine storms.
Within a minute or two, I was feeling like I had hypothermia,
causing organ failure, soaring fevers, and unbearable swelling. The patients were hospitalized for weeks afterwards, some even losing body parts to dry gangrene.
Would the drug hadn't been in my system, is there any chance it could flow onto the children?
Number 5, the terrifying career of Dr. Rhodes. While there was essentially a confession of murder in regards to this experiment, the confessor never faced any consequences. In 1931, Dr. Cornelius Rhodes conducted clinical research in Puerto Rico, studying patients with blood conditions such as anemia. While living in Puerto Rico, Rhodes wrote a vile, hateful letter where he confessed to killing 8 patients in his care and transplanting cancer into more. While no evidence of the crimes was found during the subsequent investigation, 13 patients did pass away under Rhodes's care.
It uncovered another letter, which the governor deemed worse than the first. But the governor, who was appointed governor, he's a mainlander who's been appointed and not elected, suppressed that letter.
The controversy was unfortunately swept under the rug, and Rhodes went on to be a celebrated figure in the medical field.
Cornelius Rhodes never faced a hearing. Not only that, he didn't even get fired.
Number 4, the Washington and Oregon prison radiation scandal. The United States prison system has been accused of being violent and inhumane. In the past, prisoners were even used as human guinea pigs. Between 1963 and 1973, endocrinologist Dr. Carl Heller subjected incarcerated men in Washington and Oregon to massive amounts of radiation in exchange for a paltry $5 a month. When the prisoners were forced to later undergo vasectomies, the doctor paid them an additional $100. Simultaneously, in 1963, researchers from the University of Washington subjected more than 200 incarcerated men to radiation to study the long-term effects. When the men later had children, at least 4 of the babies had birth defects, but the actual number could be even higher. Number 3, the monster study. When your colleagues are so horrified by your methods that they dub your research monstrous, that might be a sign to reevaluate. In 1939, University of Iowa graduate student Mary Tudor and psychologist Wendell Johnson conducted speech therapy experiments on 22 orphan children. During the study, 11 of the children were praised during their positive speech therapy sessions. However, the other half of the children underwent negative speech therapy, during which they were ridiculed. Many of the children who were subjected to ridicule showed signs of major psychological damage for years afterwards, some for the remainder of their lives. Nearly 7 decades later, the state of Iowa awarded $1.2 million to 7 of the surviving children for emotional damage. Number 2, Stubbins Firth's yellow fever obsession. In 1801, Stubbins Firth began studying medicine at the University of Pennsylvania. Inspired by the 1793 yellow fever epidemic that ended thousands of lives in Pennsylvania, his research quickly honed in on the disease. Firth theorized that the disease was not contagious and conducted horrifying experiments using himself as a guinea pig. He poured vomit of yellow fever patients into cuts on his arms and even into his eyes. When that failed to infect him, he cooked the vomit and inhaled the fumes, and then moved on to drinking the contaminated bodily fluid.
Don't drink it, Ron.
Thankfully for Firth, the vomit used was from late-stage patients and no longer contained the virus, so despite his best efforts, he evaded infection. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into Settings and switch on your notifications. Number 1, the Stanford Prison Experiment. Widely regarded as one of the most infamously unethical psychological experiments in United States history, the Stanford Prison Experiment was conducted over several days in August 1971.
You're going to be very pleased to know that you all have been chosen to be the prison guards
The experiment mimicked prison life, with some participants playing the roles of guards and others playing the roles of prisoners.
This isn't about fun, this is a job.
Yeah, but for 15 bucks?
Yeah, 15 bucks that I really need.
Over the course of the experiment, the guards became more and more brutal to the prisoners, causing major psychological harm, including complete mental breakdowns and zombie-like behavior.
Come on, man, don't do that. It hurts my ears.
Maybe you'll think about that next time you get yourself put in the hole.
Because the experiment got so out of hand, it was cut 8 days short. Although the experiment was horrible, it did positively change some aspects of how prisons in the United States are run.
Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.